We used to sit at that table like a family. We used to eat under the same roof with the same forks, the same forced laughter. I told myself those meals meant something, that the repetition built roots, that if I poured enough years into this house, this boy, this woman, I'd grow into something permanent. But permanence is a lie told to those who carry the weight. The house outside St. Augustine wasn't much, but it had good bones. I remember the day we moved in. I installed the water heater myself. Took me 12 hours, a bruised rib, and a burn I still have on my left wrist. Marissa had been watching from the porch, cradling a glass of wine and saying things like, "We really should have hired someone." She laughed when I cursed, but she didn't help. Evan was 13 then, scrawny, watchful. He hovered in the corners of rooms like a cat. He never asked me anything directly. If he wanted something, he told Marissa, and she would relay the message as if she were the diplomat between two neighboring countries, friendly, but not allies. Still, I thought we'd get there. I believed in time, in the slow build. I told myself he just needed consistency. I gave it to him, every day. I showed up. I paid the bills. I drove him to school when his friends bailed. I bought his first pair of cleats. I showed up at every game, even when he kept his eyes on the ground and walked past me afterward. He didn't call me anything. Not Dad. Not even Mike. I was just there. Presence. A shadow he tolerated. At first, Marissa would correct him. "Say thank you," she'd prompt. "He's trying." She said it gently, as if I were made of glass and couldn't handle being dismissed. But that stopped after a while. Eventually, even she forgot to thank me. She started leaving the receipts out, small hints. "He needs new books. I don't have time for the pharmacy. You'll pick up dinner, right?" No question marks. Just expectations. The house started to feel like a stage I was funding, but not allowed to act on. Still, I stayed, because I told myself that's what men do. You build the structure first, the warmth comes later. You dig the trenches, you pour the concrete, you pray they grow grateful. And then came Sunday. That table, solid oak for chairs, had seen everything. Birthday candles, spilled wine, tears that nobody wanted to talk about. It was a monument to the life I thought we were building. Roast chicken, carrots glazed with brown sugar, mashed potatoes so thick they held the shape of the spoon. Marissa went all out that night, like she always did when she was guilty. Evan sat to her right. I was opposite him. The third seat, the one to her left, had always been mine. Until it wasn't. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't sneer. He just said it. "That seat's not yours. It's for my real father." And then, like he was noting the weather, he was never normal. I thought I misheard him. I waited for Marissa to speak, to laugh it off, to say, "Evan, that's not fair," or "Don't be cruel." But she just kept spooning carrots onto his plate. No eye contact. No protest. As if they'd rehearsed this scene without me. And maybe they had. That moment wasn't spontaneous. It was a line drawn with precision. Calculated. Emotionless. A 13-year performance, ending with a quiet dismissal. I looked at her again, and it all clicked. The missing photos. The ones she used to keep of us. Our first beach trip, my arms around both of them at his 8th grade graduation. Gone from the frames, replaced with landscapes and solo *TS of Evan. She'd called it a design update. I believed her. The way she'd started running errands more often. Phone always face down. The way she flinched when I reached for her hand in public. I told myself it was stress, work, aging, anything but what it was. She was already letting go. And Evan was just following her cue. I remember the chair felt colder beneath me. My food tasted like paper. I chewed because it gave me something to do. I kept my hands steady because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing the tremor that had taken root in my chest. What do you say to a child who draws a boundary so cleanly? What do you say to a woman who doesn't flinch when it's drawn? I didn't speak. I didn't ask who had told him to say it. I didn't push for context or clarity, because I saw the truth written across both of their faces. This wasn't new. They had talked about this, maybe for months, maybe for years, and I was just the last one to find out. After dinner, Marissa collected the plates. Evan went upstairs without a word. I stayed at the table, fingers digging into the wood grain like I was holding on for balance. That chair had been mine for 10 years. It was a cheap line. That seat's not yours. But it cut clean. Because I realized, in that moment, that nothing in that house was mine. Not the chair. Not the boy. Not even the silence. It all belonged to someone else now. His real father. The one who came around twice a year, dropped off gifts with retail tags still on them. Derek. The charming ghost. The man whose name Marissa spoke with a wistful smile, as if remembering some long-lost song. I was the one who stayed, who fixed the roof, paid the braces bill, listened to Evan scream into his pillow the night he didn't make the soccer team. But none of that mattered now, because he wasn't wrong. Was he? I wasn't normal. Normal men don't build families out of borrowed parts. They don't spend years waiting for gratitude that never arrives. They don't sit quietly while someone else is handed their chair. I went to bed that night without brushing my teeth. Marissa didn't follow me up. She stayed downstairs, lights on, phone glowing. I don't know if she was texting Derek. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. Because knowing would mean admitting I had lost something that was never really mine. I stared at the ceiling until morning, listening, waiting, hoping for some kind of correction. For Marissa to come upstairs, touch my arm, say he didn't mean it. But she didn't. And in that silence, the foundation cracked. Not all at once. Not like a collapse. But slow, quiet, like wood rotting beneath paint. Like pipes freezing in the walls. Like a chair no longer being yours. It's strange what you remember when something ends. I remember the light. That soft, golden spill through the blinds the next morning. Painting lines across the kitchen tile like bars. I sat there with my coffee, listening to the sound of Evan upstairs, the rhythm of someone who has never had to earn silence, never had to apologize to keep peace. I didn't say a word to Marissa. She came downstairs eventually, her eyes puffy but dry. She moved around the kitchen like she'd lived there alone. Didn't ask if I wanted more coffee. Didn't say good morning. Just existed. Like I was some polite stranger renting a room. That was the day I stopped hoping. I went out to the shed. The lock was rusted, hadn't been opened in months. Inside were all the things I used to fix this family. Paint cans, power tools, spare tiles. A box labeled Christmas Lights Untangle, written in Evan's scrawl from years ago, when he still laughed at my dumb jokes and called me by name. I sat in that shed for an hour, and I didn't touch a single thing. That was the morning Marissa posted the photo. It didn't show up right away. It wasn't meant for me, not directly. But I saw it anyway. Her, Evan, and Derek. Taken earlier that same day. Just hours before that dinner. The three of them, standing in front of a food truck in St. Augustine, holding sandwiches and smiling. Marissa wore the scarf I bought her last Christmas. Evan had that half-smirk he saves for people who he thinks deserve his full attention. Derek looked relaxed, present, like he belonged. The caption, "Finally, the real family back together. Red heart." I didn't react, didn't call her, didn't confront Evan. I just stared at that photo for a long, long time. Then I locked my phone and laid it face down on the table, the same way she always does. That's when I knew. The table conversation wasn't a flare-up. It wasn't heat of the moment. It was the closing act. The photo was the rehearsal. The caption was the contract. They'd agreed to move on. I just hadn't been told. You think you'll scream when betrayal lands. That you'll rage, break things, throw words like knives. But when it finally arrives, it's quiet. Not even a whisper. Just a clean, cold shift. Like a tide receding. Like someone walking out of a room and closing the door behind them. They'd been planning the exit. I was just the last one off the script. It was around noon when I walked into the home office. The room had become a kind of shrine to responsibility. File cabinets stacked with receipts. A printer older than Evan. Folders labeled with names and dates. Taxes, braces, FAFSA forms, enrollment letters, trust paperwork. The trust. That word echoed in my head in two forms. There was the legal one, the document I'd signed years ago to secure Evan's education, his medical costs, his future. A structured fund, irrevocable unless amended by authority. And then there was the human version. The kind you build one dinner at a time. One apology at a time. One quiet act of presence when no one else shows up. Both were broken now. At exactly 2:40 p.m., I called the bank. No anger. No explanation. Just this. I need to revoke authorization for the trust account associated with Evan Brooks. I'd like to dissolve the contribution schedule and remove access permissions from all associated parties. The woman on the phone paused, asked if I was certain. I said I was. She asked again. This will alter the payment plan for the next 6 years. Do you understand the impact? I do. May I ask the reason for the termination, sir? I paused. Then, I am no longer considered part of this family. There was silence. Then a polite confirmation. Then the process began. 30 minutes later, the documents were emailed over. I signed them with a hand that didn't shake. Initials here. Full name here. Signature over a future I no longer had a role in. It was done. The digital trail that had tethered me to Evan's life, tuition payments, health premiums, auto transfer stipends, was cut, clean and final. The bridge collapsed. Not burned. Just dismantled. Piece by quiet piece. And I didn't tell them. I wanted the silence to speak first. It didn't take long. By 5 p.m., the messages began. Evan, hey, something's wrong with my card. Can't get gas. Marissa, did the tuition auto-pay bounce? Just got a weird email. Evan again. Insurance portal won't log me in? Then, hello. Then, hours later, Mom's freaking out. The next morning, Marissa called. I let it ring. Then again. And again. When I finally answered, her voice wasn't angry. It was tight. Controlled. There's been some kind of mistake. No, I said. There hasn't. A long pause. Michael. You can't just shut everything off. I let that hang. You need to explain what's going on. Evan's tuition, the trust, what happened? He made a choice, I said. What? He told me I wasn't his father. Dinner. In front of you. And you didn't say a word. That was a choice. Now this is mine. Her voice cracked then. You're punishing him for being a teenager. No. I'm reacting like a man who's finally listening. You're destroying his future. No, I said again. I just stopped paying for it. She hung up. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't absence. It was fury without fuel. Anger that had nowhere left to land. And that's when the panic truly began. Over the next 24 hours, I got 14 texts from Evan. 5 from Marissa. 2 voicemails from a number I didn't recognize, Derek's, I assume. They all said different versions of the same thing. You can't do this. Not a single one asked how I felt. Not a single one said thank you for the years before. Not a single one called me dad. Only, what do we do now? You need to fix this. Why are you doing this? That last one stuck with me. Why? Because I was never invited in, not fully. Because I paid like a father, worked like a husband, served like a ghost. Because when it finally came time to claim my seat at the table, I was told it belonged to someone else. So I stood up. I walked out. I did the one thing they never expected. I agreed with them. You want Derek? You get Derek. You want a real father? Then may he also carry the weight. May he answer the midnight calls. May he sit through the FAFSA. May he pay for the next round of textbooks and the next round of disappointment. But not me. I'm done bleeding for a role I was never allowed to own. And it's funny, the moment you step back, the house begins to shake. Not because you took anything, but because they suddenly realize who was holding the foundation together all along. It wasn't Derek. It wasn't Marissa. It wasn't love. It was me. And now I'm gone. The next morning, the house was quiet. Not peaceful, not still, just quiet in the way a battlefield is quiet after the fighting ends and all that remains is smoke and broken things. I hadn't gone back. Not after the call. Not after the texts. Not after the voice messages that started to shift from panic to accusation. They'd moved quickly from what happened to how dare you. That told me everything. There was no attempt to understand. Only expectation. Only the assumption that I would bend again, that I would clean up after the mess, balance the accounts, plug the holes in a boat they'd already set on fire. But I didn't return. Not to the house. Not to the table. Not to the roll. Because something had finally cracked. Not out of rage. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything, but out of clarity. A final clarity. The kind that comes too late to save anything but yourself. By noon, I had moved my belongings into a small rental near the edge of the city. 1 bedroom, no yard. Just 4 walls and a clean lease signed in only my name. No photographs on the shelves. No soccer cleats in the hallway. No reminders. And still the messages came. Marissa again. Evan is devastated. He's failing his classes now. Is that what you wanted? Be an adult. Come talk to us. But I didn't need to talk. I'd already listened. I'd listened when he said the seat wasn't mine. I'd listened when she didn't object. I'd listened when their silence said more than their words ever had. So now they would listen to mine. The silence that followed my withdrawal was instructional. For years, I had believed that if I gave enough time, money, presence, the love would follow. That respect would bloom from consistency. But all I had taught them was that I was permanent. Replaceable, but always there. They had treated me like a tap. One they could spit into, curse at, and still expect clean water to flow. Now they were tasting the drought. 3 days after 2:40 p.m., I got a call from Evans University, the bursar's office. The voice was polite, rehearsed. She informed me that the payment plan had defaulted, that unless the balance was cleared in full within 7 business days, enrollment would be frozen. Evan would be dropped from all registered courses. I told her to forward all future communication to his mother, or better yet, his biological father. I could almost hear the discomfort in her silence. But she agreed. That night, I turned my phone off. The apartment felt cold, but it was mine. And in that coldness, I began to remember things. Not warm memories, not fond ones, but the quiet humiliations that I'd learned to endure. How Evan used to walk ahead of me in public, like I was the hired help. How Marissa once told her sister, "He's not really Evan's dad, but he tries." How every Father's Day, I waited for a card that never came, not once, and still I gave. Every hospital form I signed, every fundraiser I funded, every lie I swallowed, I turned into a meal, a ride, a roof. But the house I helped build was never mine. It was staged, like I'd been brought in to play the part of a father until the real one showed up with flowers and excuses. And now that he had, they expected me to keep funding the theater. But the stage lights were off. The next day, Marissa showed up at my door. She didn't knock right away. I saw her through the peephole, pacing, arms crossed, that same tension in her jaw she used to get when Evan left dishes in the sink. I waited, let her stand there. Finally, she knocked. 3 sharp raps, like a summons. I opened the door and didn't invite her in. "Michael," she said. Her tone was careful, like someone handling glass. "We need to talk." "We are." She hesitated. "You can't just disappear." I looked her in the eye. I didn't. I was erased. Her mouth opened, then shut. She tried again. "Evan didn't mean what he said. He's a teenager. They say things." "No," I said. "They say things when they're caught in the moment. This wasn't that. This was rehearsed. You knew it. You let it happen. That's not fair." "No," I said again. "What's not fair is carrying a child through adolescence, paying for every moment of his life, and being told at dinner that I never belonged." Her voice broke then. "He's scared. He doesn't know what to do. Everything's falling apart." "Good," I said. She recoiled. "What?" "It should fall apart. Because it wasn't real. If a family can be undone by the loss of a wallet, it was never a family." Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't move. I didn't reach for her. I let her stand in that silence the same way I had stood in theirs for years. She finally said it. The thing that had been waiting in the wings. "We need the money." There it was. Not "we need you." Not "we miss you." Just the money. I nodded once. Then call Derek. She flinched. He can't afford it. You know that? No. I suspected. Now I know. And Evan? You're just going to let him fail? I let the question hang. Because it was the wrong question. The real one was, are you going to let him learn? She left soon after. I didn't watch her go. The fallout came quick. Faster than I expected. 2 days later, Evan showed up. He didn't knock. He stood in the parking lot, hoodie up, phone in hand. A boy out of place. I watched him from the window. He didn't look up once. Just stood there like the apartment might absorb him through the concrete. Eventually, I opened the door. He looked up. His voice was small. Hey! I said nothing. He walked closer. Not all the way. Just enough to speak. I need help, he said. I waited. They're gonna drop me from school. My card doesn't work. Insurance is canceled. Everything's, he stopped. Then, you didn't have to do this. That broke something in me, because it told me what he still didn't understand. I didn't do this to him. He did this to us. I stepped outside. He backed up a little. Still that child somewhere inside, not sure if the punishment would land. You sat across from me at the table, I said. And you told me the seat wasn't mine. You said your real father belonged there. You said I was never normal. And your mother said nothing. So I believed you. His voice cracked. I was mad. I didn't mean it. You meant it enough to practice. You meant it enough to say it where it counted. Silence. He shifted his weight. So that's it. No, I said. This is it. This is where you learn that love without respect is slavery. And I've been in chains for a decade. His eyes went wide. You're serious. Ask Derek for help. Ask your real father. The man whose seat you saved. He won't help. I shrugged. Then maybe you should have thought of that before spitting on the only man who ever showed up. His face twisted. So what? I'm supposed to just fail? No, I said. You're supposed to grow. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just stood there, hollowed out, stunned. As if the reality had finally caught up to him. Then he left. No goodbye. Just footsteps and the sound of a world beginning to collapse. And I didn't stop him. I didn't hear from him for 6 weeks. Not a word. Not a knock. Not a message. Just silence. The kind that doesn't feel like peace. Just an echo of all the things that were never said in time. At first, I expected him to come back. Not because I wanted him to, but because that's how it always worked. The pattern. The rhythm. He would vanish, hide in his pride, then circle back just long enough to take what he needed. A favor. Payment. A signature. But this time, the line had been cut. And nothing was coming through. I'd left the old house behind. Left the insurance documents in a folder on the kitchen counter. Left the spare keys in the drawer with the bent spoons. Left my tools in the shed, right where Evan used to sneak in and steal the hammer for his school projects. I didn't even take the photos, what few were left of me. Anyway, I walked out like a tenant, because that's what I'd always been. 2 weeks after I moved out, Marissa tried again. She left a message, voice shaking, said Evan had lost weight, said he wasn't sleeping, said he'd been dropped from 2 classes and was now on academic probation. I listened to the message, then deleted it. Not out of cruelty, not to make a point, but because there was nothing left to say. She chose to let the boy I raised erase me with 1 sentence. She chose silence when correction was needed. And silence is a choice, especially from someone who knows what you've given, who's seen the cost in your hands, your eyes, your spine. You don't get to break a man's back and then cry when he doesn't carry you anymore. The first time I saw Evan again was by accident. It was a Tuesday. I'd gone to the bank to cancel a dormant savings account. I was sitting in the waiting area when he walked in. Hair longer, shoulders hunched, clothes looser, like he hadn't noticed he was shrinking. He didn't see me at first. He walked straight to the teller, pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. I watched from the corner of my eye. I need to cash this, he said. The teller frowned. It says it's a custodial check. From a trust account. He nodded. I'm sorry, she said. This account was closed last month. He stood there, motionless. Then, can I talk to someone? She gestured toward the line. You can speak to a manager, but if the funds aren't there, there's nothing to release. He turned around, and that's when he saw me. His face froze. Not embarrassment. Not guilt. Just emptiness. Like someone who just realized they were completely, entirely alone. He didn't come over. Didn't wave. He just left. Didn't look back. I didn't follow. Some things are meant to break. Not everything deserves repair. It's hard to describe what it feels like when you realize you've raised someone else's child, and all you've been left with is receipts. You look at the statements, dental bills, car repairs, emergency room visits, and you wonder how many of them he even remembers. You wonder if he knows how many nights you worked overtime so the balance wouldn't bounce. If he ever looked at the dinner table and thought, that man built this. I doubt it, because boys don't become men by accident. They learn by what's modeled. And all I ever modeled was endurance. I taught him that a man absorbs disrespect. I taught him that love means staying, no matter how deep the disrespect cuts. That you keep feeding people who spit in your food. That you stay quiet when your name disappears from the fridge, from the mailbox, from the family photos. That's on me. I stayed too long, gave too much, hoped too blindly. I kept thinking that the next sacrifice would be the one that changed things. That if I just showed up again and again and again, the tide would turn. But all I did was teach them how far I could be pushed. You'd think the absence would be freeing. That walking away would feel like flight. But it doesn't. It feels like funeral silence. Not for them, for the man I used to be. The man who bent himself into a shape they could stand to be around. The man who traded every self-worth chip for one more chance to be called Dad. A title never spoken. Never earned. Never gifted. The word hung in the air for over a decade. But when the moment came to use it, really use it, Evan chose blood. He chose absence over presence. He chose a man who showed up twice a year with movie tickets and baseball caps over the man who waited in hospital parking lots and signed school checks with a shaking hand. And now he was learning what that choice cost. A week after the bank, he showed up at my door. Not the house, not the old place, my apartment. I don't know how he found it. Maybe Marissa told him. Maybe desperation gives boys the instincts of hunters. He knocked. Once. Twice. Then just stood there. When I opened the door, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I just felt tired. He looked smaller. Paler. His face carried the shape of someone who'd been looking for a different outcome and finally understood it wouldn't come. Michael, he said. My name. First time in years. I didn't speak. He swallowed hard. I just wanted to say I was wrong. There it was. A sentence. Peace offering. A crack in the wall. I was angry. I was stupid. I didn't mean it. I looked at him for a long time. He shifted his weight. I lost everything. School's a mess. I can't get loans. I tried to get a job, but... He trailed off. Silence. I'm sorry, he said again. I nodded. That was all. He looked at the floor. Can we? I don't know. Talk? And here's the part one still think about. I almost said yes. I almost stepped aside. Almost made coffee, sat down, reopened the wound. But something in me stopped. Because I saw what was missing. It wasn't just regret. It wasn't just fear. It was understanding. He hadn't come to rebuild anything. He'd come because the world had finally stopped shielding him. Because the safety net was gone. Because the bills had names now, names he couldn't pronounce, much less pay. This wasn't growth. It was desperation. So I did what no one had done for me when I stayed too long in a place I wasn't wanted. I set a boundary. No, I said. He blinked. What? I'm glad you understand. I hope you grow from it. But this? I gestured between us. This is done. His voice cracked. So that's it. You told me I wasn't your father, I said. And I listened. This is the result of that sentence. A sentence you meant. A sentence you never took back until the world turned on you. He looked like he might cry, but I didn't soften. Words matter, I said. Respect matters. And I won't trade 16 years of sacrifice for 6 minutes of regret. He didn't argue. Just stood there, nodding, swallowing something heavy. Okay, he said. I get it. He turned, walked down the stairs. I watched until he disappeared. And that was the last time I saw him. I don't know where he is now. Maybe he found work. Maybe Derek stepped in. Maybe Marissa did what she always does. Patchwork silence, duct tape affection, and just enough guilt to make a boy feel like someone owes him love. But not me, because I don't owe anymore. I don't carry anymore. I gave. I broke. I learned. And this is what I learned. Love is not infinite. Sacrifice is not always holy. Presence is not enough when it is not honored. I was there. I showed up. I paid. I stayed. And they erased me. So now I ask you, whoever reads this, whoever thinks I went too far, was I wrong? Was I cruel to end the performance when the script no longer served me? Was I wrong to stop funding the lives of people who couldn't speak my name unless it was tied to a bank account? Would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying? Would you have sat at that table night after night, being served silence and betrayal and still asked for seconds? If the answer is yes, then maybe you're better than me. But if the answer is no, if you too would have walked away, then understand, I didn't fail as a stepfather. I was failed by the belief that sacrifice guarantees love. It doesn't. Respect does. And without it, all you're doing is financing your own erasure.